Torah originally, but rather became part of, became part of the Torah as the Torah was going through, as a living Torah. These 5 incidences were things, so they represented by the abbreviation Minatz Pei. Okay. At the end of the Parsha, we have the whole section of the Makalel. Someone goes and he curses Hashem. We'll talk about it a little bit more in a moment. But the question was, the Torah then says, and by the way, his mother's name was, what was his mother's name? Shlomit Bat Divri. Now why does it tell us his mother's name? I mean, here's a person who went out, had a din Torah, lost the case, got angry, cursed Hashem.
She was one that said hi to everybody.
So the Gemara says that his fault, his problem, originated from the mother. That means it wasn't that he was a victim of circumstance. We're going to find out exactly what happened in a moment, in a few minutes. But it was all his mother's fault. Why? His mother was overly friendly. It's a play on her name, Shlomit Bat Divri. She would always go around saying to everybody, hello, 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 how are you?
Shalom,
shalom, shalom, shalom. The problem is that in Pirkei Avot, which we read between Pesach and Rosh Hashanah, it says, Havi maktim b'sholom kol adam. A person should always greet another person. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was always known as being very friendly. Whenever he walked into a room, he would say hello first. So what's the crime in saying hello? Here they're faulting her, Shlomit Bat Divri, she was overly friendly, but being friendly is an appropriate way of behaving.
Maybe
she liked it.
So it's more than just being friendly. She was, I guess they would classify it as that she was a gossiper. That means it was Shlomit. She not only did she say hello, Bat Divri, she would talk a lot. That means what's going on, what's new, what's happening, how's your neighbor doing?
How's your wife? How is your
wife? It was beyond just a simple hello.
To communicate.
It started with a hello, but it became much more intense. And that's why they mention it. To say to you, saying hello, that's okay. That's not a problem. But when you overly do it, that's a problem. Okay.
Especially for women, right?
Especially amongst women. So now, let's go a little bit further. In Parshas Emor, we have the mitzvah of the Omer. What exactly is the Omer? What is Sfiras HaOmer? What are we counting? So, you have to understand what we're doing. On the second day of Pesach, they brought a korban called the Omer. The korban came from the new wheat. Until you bring a korban from the new wheat, you could not use the wheat. That was called chodosh. Have you ever heard the term chodosh? You know, kemach yoshon, which means the flour is old. See, in the United States, they have 2 cycles of wheat. They have summer wheat, but they have winter wheat. And what happens is they harvest the wheat in, let's say, October, November. That wheat, which gets now processed, and you can buy it as flour, gold medal and different flours that are kosher, is chodosh. It hasn't gone through a Pesach. So therefore, you're not allowed to use that wheat. And when these harvesting come out, people try to stock up on wheat beforehand, and they use kemach yoshon. The problem that we have in the United States is that when you speak to the older generation, they'll tell you, I don't understand what the problem with chodosh is. In the 60s and the 70s, we never had chodosh. Never heard of it, which is true. In the 1960s and the 1970s in the United States, there probably wasn't one sign that said kemach yoshon on it. They had no concept of chodosh. Some people say chodesh only applies to Israel, but not in Chustars, but let's go beyond that. There's a reason why. The reason why was the United States used to stockpile wheat. We had 7 years of wheat stockpiled into these tremendous silos. So for example, if you cut wheat in 1965, the wheat that was being used came from 1958, 1959. It had gone through now 1 Pesach, 7 Pesachs.
It's no problem.
So it was never a problem. Everything was
It's
Yosher.
still now also like this.
No. What happened was either President
For the war.
Nixon or President Reagan,
Because of war, right?
right, sold all the wheat and gave all the wheat away to both Russia and China as a way of making peace and getting things done. So all the silos were emptied. So now, when the wheat is cut, it's immediately processed and put into the stores. So now we have the problem of Yosha. Now we have the problem of Chodesh. Now that's gone because of right after Pesach. But what happened was, on Pesach, they brought a korban of the new wheat from barley. And then they counted 49 days. On the 50th day, Shavuot, they brought shtei halechem, 2 loaves of bread made from fine flour. So that was the Sfirat HaOmer. You went from barley to fine flour. Now, why do they do it that way? Very fascinating. They say that barley is known in the Gemara as ma'achal be'ema. Animals ate the barley, not humans. It's not fit for human consumption. So it's trying to tell you that from Pesach, we were simply on the same level as the animal, no different than any living creature. What changed was when we got the Torah on Shavuot. Then we went from barley to fine flour. And that's where they learned. Im ein kemach, ein Torah. If there's no flour, there's no Torah. Im ein Torah, ein kemach. If there's no Torah, there's no flour. So it's fascinating how they balance the two out. So really, the whole idea of the Omer, bringing the 2 lechem, is the counting, is to psychologically prepare ourselves for from Pesach to Shavuot was a prep, was an opportunity to get ready for Kabbalah HaTorah. And of course, Rabbi Akiva's students were not all that ready to get ready, and they suffered. But there's a lot written about the Omer, the power of the Omer. And throughout Tanakh, Haman, when he came into the yeshiva, they were showing the Omer, and it defeated his 10,000 shkalim. Chizkiyahu had that, Gidon had that. In Tanakh, we have a lot that talks about the Omer. It goes even more than that. Parshas Emor talks about the field. When you're a farmer and you're harvesting your field, there are certain things you have to be very careful of. If some of the grain, some of the stalks fall to the ground, can't pick it up. Lek it. If you tied up a sheaf and you forgot one of them, shicha, you can't take it. And the corner of your field was hail. And we read this right now, this time of year. It's not the harvest season right now, but it's Shavuot coming. And in the story of Shavuot, what do we learn all about? Leket, shicha, and peah. That's what brought Ruth into the field of Boaz. She went to collect food. What was the food? Flour, stalk, grain, basics. That means the Israeli economy, based on the Torah, had their form of food stamps, their kollel store. You could go, if you were dead broke, you could go and you could bring home enough flour to make challah, rolls, and maybe it was bread and water, but you had food. That means you were not starving. It wasn't that the rich got richer, and if you took something that didn't belong to you, you ended up in jail. It didn't happen that way. Of course, if you stole and you couldn't pay back what you stole, they sold you as you were sold as a slave. And that was okay because you were treated better than the master. If you had only one pillow, you got the pillow, you got the bed. The girls were sold, they were sold so they should be wives. If you wanted to marry, so they got married. If you didn't want to marry, you were let go. So, it was just fascinating to see, the system. It was a social system where the communities help support each other. Nobody should have been that destitute that they were starving. They had soup kitchens, they had tzedakos, they had fields. It was a culture that allowed people to survive. You know, it really did. It goes a little bit further. Ushmartem es mitzvosai va'asisem osam. The Torah has a very interesting halacha. Watch my mitzvos and do them. Meaning, it implies, this is what Rabbi Kamenetsky writes, it implies not only should you do the mitzvos I give you, but you should look for opportunities to do other mitzvos. And he brings down a story here. He says that there was a gentleman in Chicago named Rabbi Yisrael Zellman. His father from Rabbi Zissel Zellman was Rabbi Yisrael Zellman. Now, in Chicago, Saturday night, when davening was over in the 1950s, 1960s, we had this in Kew Gardens also, I remember it. On the way home from shul, they had these little kiosks, stores. And many people, when they're way home from shul, will pick up the newspaper. So on your way home from shul Saturday night, you would stop by the local kiosk and you would take a copy of the Newsweek or Newsday and the New York Times or whatever it is, the New York Post. People took the newspaper. They didn't have home delivery in those days, so you didn't get the delivery at home. Now these people didn't have any money with them. They just came back from shul. It was Motzei Shabbat. But they knew that the Jewish people will come back on Sunday and pay for the newspaper. So they weren't worried. You know, by that time the news was already old news. So this guy, every Saturday night, used to pick up 2 or 3 newspapers. So his son, you know, I guess, must have said to him, you know, are you so interested in what happened in the news? Or are you so interested in what happened in the sports? You want to know so badly what the Chicago Cubs were doing, or the New York Yankees were doing, or whatever? And the answer was no. He didn't even want the newspapers. He gave the newspapers to his wife. What did she do? She opened it to the obituaries. You know what the obituaries are? All the names of the people who died. Now, there's an old joke. Every day someone looks in the obituaries and they say, what are you looking for? I just want to make sure my name is not on the list. You know, people do that all the time. And they just want to make sure my name's not on the
These
list.
are the same with the Bukhari Times.
You see who's on the list, right? So this lady, very interesting, she used to go and open up the obituaries. Because in the Saturday obituaries, it listed all the unveilings on Sunday morning. Then she would go to the Jewish cemetery to all the unveilings. And she would collect money to be sent to the yeshivas in Europe. You have to remember, in those days, back in the 30s and the 40s, believe it or not, the monies weren't coming to America, it was just the opposite. America sent money to Europe to support the yeshivas. And she has plaques in her memory all over the place because of what she did. She didn't wait for mitzvos. She got newspapers, she found out where the unveilings were. When people have unveilings, they're very generous with their tzedakah.
What's unveiling?
What? Unveilings when you set up the stone. After a person passes away, for the first year, there's no marker. Then you will put up a marker, a stone. And in America, what they used to do is they used to cover the stone with a cloth. And they would unveil the stone, they would read what was on the stone, they would say some Tehillim, they would say Kaddish. And you had some of the older women with pushkas. And people would take dollar bills and stuff them into the pushkas. So on a good Sunday, you could make a few $100s. Then they would take that money and they would mail it to Europe. A few $100s could feed the whole yeshiva for a week. You know? And that's what she did. I mean, she ran after it. She created her own mitzvah, so-called. It's not that she created her own Torah, but she created opportunities to do chesed. You know, there are people like that. They create opportunities to do chesed. And it's wonderful how they're able to do it. So that was something that she did. We talk about the students of Rabbi Akiva. The Yalkut Shimoni, we talked about this a little bit last year. The Yalkut Shimoni said as follows. He brings down that Rabbi Akiva's student that took care of him was Rabbi Yehoshua. And Rabbi Akiva was arrested. He was in jail. The Romans had put him in jail. And on Yom Kippur, Eliyahu Hanavi came to Rabbi Yehoshua and said, I have bad news to tell you. Your teacher has died in prison. Rabbi Akiva died, his yortzeit is Yom Kippur. Most people don't know that. And on Yom Kippur, we read the whole Asarei Harugei Malchus, those 10 people who died, is part of the Yom Kippur davening. We read it because Rabbi Akiva's yortzeit is Yom Kippur. So Eliyahu Hanavi said to Rabbi Yoshua, let's go together and let's bury him. And according to the Yalkut Shimoni, he came to the jail guard was sleeping, the jail door was open because he had died, and they were able to go in and carry his body out, and they took it to a cave in Tveria, and Rabbi Akiva is buried in Tveria. As a matter of fact, Rabbi Akiva is right by the Ramchal. Right there. He's buried in Tveria.
Yeah.
So they all asked the question, okay, I got Rabbi Yoshua, no problem. But Eliyahu Hanavi is a Kohen. He was Pinchas, a Kohen. What's he doing burying Rabbi Akiva? I mean, it's really not his job. Angels in general, we just learned that a Kohen can't make himself Tomei.
It's not a human being, that's why.
It's a mitzvah.
What?
It's a mitzvah.
No.
So, yes, 1 second, he's right. They bring down that everybody was afraid to bury or touch anyone killed by the Roman government, so therefore he became a mace mitzvah. The Kohen's allowed to be matama mitzvah. That's one of the answers. But the other thing is, you're saying that he wasn't a human being, he was a malach.
That's why I know.
Right? Or some people say that the bodies of Talmidei Chachamim don't make you Tomei. There are opinions that say that Kohanim are allowed to go to, for example, the Morat HaMachpelah, Kever Rachel. They generally don't. But there are some opinions that say they do. That the bodies of a Talmid Chacham, of a tzaddik, does not make you Tomei.
So,
But
if you're
he was a Meis Mitzvah, yes.
if you are gone, can he go to the Shmuel Halavi's grave?
So if you hold to those opinions, then you could go to the graves of Shimon HaTzadik, Shmuel HaNavi, things of that nature. Now some of these graves are in open areas, so they
That's what I'm
to a-
asking,
right, because it's open. So then it's not considered an ohel. But yes, there are some people who say yes, and there are some people who say no.
What about the Rebbe's Ohel?
What?
The Rebbe's Ohel?
Well, the Rebbe's ohel is open for that reason. That means the Lubavitcher Rebbe in
But there's a
Montefiore
problem- but there's a problem
has no
is-
cover on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So-
there is one problem that when they crossing, getting to the rabbi's grave, they're going between those graves. Are they?
Right, so they shouldn't do that. It shouldn't be within 8 feet of the graves. But the Rebbe's grave is at the end of, it's on near a road. So they get close, but not that close. But yes, that's the big debate. Yes or no. It says that they used to be very strict. They bring down from the Sefer HaPardes that the lulav had 60, a lulav is a palm, has 60 leaves to it. Why? Because there's 60 letters in Birkat Kohanim. So people would try to buy a lulav that was very thick, that had at least 60 leaves to it. Then he says that the lulav grows on top of the tree. So it gets its sustenance from the air. It's like mushrooms. They don't grow from the ground, they grow from the air. He says that it's like a person. A person gets his sustenance from above. And that's why they compare a tzaddik to a lulav. Tzaddik katomor yifrach. The tzaddik grows like the lulav. The lulav gets its life from the air, so a tzaddik also gets it from the air, from Shemayim. So they have a lot of different segulos and a lot of things written about the lulavim and everything else. He brings down over here from Rav Shalom Shvadron a famous story. It talks about a Kohen, for example. A Kohen is not supposed to marry a woman who's divorced. And we get these questions all the time. I have very often Kohanim come and see me, they bring me a young lady, I would like to marry her. Okay, that's wonderful, but she was married before and she's divorced. So can a Kohen marry such a woman? The answer is no. Some Kohanim do, because they say, well, maybe I'm not a Kohen. I think I'm a Kohen, maybe I'm a Kohen, but I'm not a Kohen. It's amazing how the Torah gets beaten up in these type of situations. The truth of the matter is, let's say a Kohen is married and he divorces his wife, and now he wants to remarry her back. It's his own wife.
He can't do it. He's not.
He can't do it. A Kohen still cannot do it. Once he divorced her, he can't do it. He brings down from Rav Shalom Shadron the old story, the Gemara. The Gemara in Gittin talks about what's a good reason to divorce your wife. It's not talking about first marriage, it's not second marriage. It says, so one opinion is if she burnt his soup. you burnt the soup. She
Did you really
burnt the
thinking-
soup.
Ah.
She's not a good cook.
Ah.
Right. Beit Hillel says that. So the Rosh Hashanah says, what do you think? A woman makes a mistake and burns the soup, you're going to throw her out? He says, no, you don't understand what the Gemara is saying. Let's say a woman cooks supper and it's burnt. So some women, you know what they do? They eat the burnt part and they give their husband the not burnt part. That you can keep her. There are some women who say, you know what? I burnt it. We'll split it. You take some of the burnt and some of the good. I'll take some of the burnt and some of the good. That's okay also. But there's some women who take the good for themselves and they give their husband the burnt.
The
That doesn't work.
The worst
The
one
responsibility of the
burns on
man.
purpose.
That
What?
is
The worst one burns on purpose
Burns it on purpose, it adds flavor. So,
for the husband.
right, so,
What if he likes it burnt?
it gets there, it gets there.
What if he likes it burnt?
Some people do. Some of my children like challah, I told you this many times, doughy. That means that the challah is almost half baked. Me, I like the regular challah where it's cooked all the way through.
Puffy.
So
Puffy.
it's a debate in the house, I don't win usually. For me, I get bakery challah and everybody else has home baked. That's how it is. The children win. Something very interesting. When we daven on Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, and we say the bracha. So we say the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem B'kadesh Yisroel V'Hazmanim. What does that mean? Hashem is B'kadesh the Jewish people, and the Zmanim, the times of the year. We assume what that means is that who decides when Pesach comes out, or Shavuot or Sukkot, was the Beit Din, the Sanhedrin, the Chachamim, because they decide when it's Rosh Chodesh. So he brings down here from Reb Baruch Epstein. He wrote a sefer called the Makor Baruch, and he brings down from his father who wrote the Orach HaShulchan. Now the Orach HaShulchan is a halacha sefer on Shulchan Aruch. That means it was the most authoritative book before the Mishnah Berurah. But the Mishnah Berurah only wrote on Orach Chaim. The Orach HaShulchan wrote on Yerodea, on Eben Ezer, and Choshen Mishpat. So it's very much in use. Every shul has it. I haven't gone through it cover to cover. The Orach HaShulchan was the book to tell you the bottom line in halacha. So he says something very fascinating. He says it never was supposed to be Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim. The way it was printed in the Siddur was Mekadesh Yisrael, and there was a line. And above the line in parentheses was the word Hazmanim. Put in the name of the Yontif. So he says it should have been Mekadesh Yisrael v'Chag HaMatzos. Or Mekadesh Yisrael v'Chag HaSukkot. Or Mekadesh Yisrael Chag HaShavuos. Uzmanim.
Particular.
Right. He says they use the word Zmanim because the Rambam, when he talks about all the Chagim, that volume was called Zmanim. So they thought that was the way the bracha was. But he says that's a mistake. It says, just like in Ya'aleh V'Yovo, it says Yom Chag HaMatzos Hazeh and everything else, he says that's exactly what should be in the Shemona Esrei. But we say, Mekadesh Yisroel, Hazmanim, he says that's a typo and doesn't belong that way. It shouldn't be that way.
Why don't we change it?
Very good question. And the answer to that question is a fascinating answer. The answer is there are many things that, because they've existed for so long, we really don't change. And it creates turmoil. And it gets to the point where somebody might tell you that a minhag, a custom, is more important than the halacha. That sometimes the minhag overrides the halacha. Not always, but in some places it does. That's a very unusual minhag. I'll give you an example. There's a rule that when you write a get, you cannot change things that have been in before. So when the United States, the rabbis moved to the United States in the 1800s, and they established cities where Gittin would be written. And I should bring in these Gittin. New York, Denver, Portland, Oregon, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. These were cities that they wrote Gittin. So now they had to write the names of the cities in Hebrew letters. So they had rules. One of the books that was very popular at that time was called the Get Mesudar. Now, we don't follow the Get Mesudar today. I'll show you in a moment why. He had an opinion. For every English letter, you have to have a Hebrew letter. Okay? So, Sally, someone's name is Sally, S-A-L-L-Y. He would spell it Samach Ayin, Lamed, Lamed, Yud. Now, if you try to read that, it doesn't spell Sally. See, we spell Sally, Samach Ayin Lamed Yud. Sally. He wrote the Mississippi River. You know how he wrote it again? Mem, Yud, Yud, Samach, Samach, Yud, Yud, Pei, Pei, Yud, Yud. You know, like M-I-S-S-I-S-S-I-P-P-I. Well, that's crazy. You know, you try to read that, it doesn't read, just because it had two S's. In Denver, we had a river called the Cherry Creek River. C-H-E-R-R-Y was Tet Shin Ayin Reish Reish Yud. So the Rabbonim in the last 20 or 30 years have all talked about, we gotta change this. We would have to change every single get written in every city across the United States.
So isn't it better to have one city to have to write the get? Let's say
Well, we
specific
can't
city.
because Jews live all over.
Yeah, but
Chicago,
in order for you, I mean, in order to get the get.
you can't travel, people don't travel.
Not the traveling, by mail or whatever it's gonna be.
The mail order doesn't work, has to be done. Chicago, when they ran Chicago, they didn't know how to pronounce the name. So the get says Chicago, that's known as Chicago, right? Because some people called it Chicago or it says Chicago. Well, nobody calls it Chicago anymore, it's Chicago.
In Russian, they say Chicago.
Okay, maybe in Russian, we're not writing it in Russian, you know? But, you know, we write for the Russians. But what I'm trying to say to you is that it's wild. So you have all these gittin. You know, we have, for example, in Denver, the Platte River, P-L-A-T-T. So in Hebrew, it's spelled Pei Lamed Aleph Tet Tet, like Platat. No, you can't read it. It doesn't make sense. So they had a meeting. Let's change it. Let's correct it. Once and for all, it's a mistake. It's a mistake that's been going on for 80 years. And the mistake, they wouldn't do it. Because if you change it, it might give it the impression that all the other gittin are not kosher. That's ridiculous. We're going to change it from today on.
So we still don't have it like that?
We still don't. Now we still do. Mem, mem, yud, yud, sama, sama, yud. Still do it? Yeah, I have gittin. I will show it to you. It's wild to see about these gittin, how they write it. Dallas is spelled with two lamets because Dallas is spelled with two
What about
lamets.
in Israel?
Now in Israel, they have their own problem. When I was in Israel, they said, how do you spell the name Golda? Gimel, Vov, Lamed, Dalet, Aleph. Yiddish names and English names are spelled with an Aleph at the end. But nobody spells Golda in Israel with an Aleph. It's all with a Hey at the end. So he says, she spelled her name with a Hey at the end her whole life, and then again we write it with an Aleph. Why? Because that's the way they did it in Europe. But we don't live in Europe anymore. Israel is a country that didn't exist in the 1880s. Okay? No, so it's a problem. But they can't change it, but they're not going to change it. They talk about changing it. They talk about making Israeli names with a Hey at the end. Akiva in the Yerushalmi is spelled with a Hey. In the Bavli, yeah. The name Akiva is with an Aleph at the end. But in the Yerushalmi, Rabbi Akiva is spelled with a Hey at the end. It's one of those names.
So which one is right?
So they're both right, but we don't do it. We don't do it with a Hey, we do it with an Aleph. Because the rule is, only Hebrew names are spelled with a Hey. Problem is, there's no such thing as a Hebrew name. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov may sound Hebrew, but they really were not. Moshe was an Egyptian name. Has a Hey at the end, right? But it's still, you know, he was an Egyptian name. You know, these were names given in Egypt. So, you talk about custom. Why don't we fix the mistakes? The answer is the mistakes, certain mistakes are allowed to exist. Where I daven, they never allowed Birkat Kohanim on Shabbos. Because the Vilna Gaon wanted to do it, and the shul burned down, etc. When the shul moved, next door was here, and they built a new building. The rabbi said, the custom here was not to do Birkat Kohanim on Shabbos. We're moving into the new building. We're going to establish a new custom to do Birkat Kohanim on Shabbos.
Let alone?
Yeah. So now they do Birkat Kohanim on Shabbos.
Which show?
Rabbi Teitelbaum show
Where is it?
in Kew Gardens. When they davened here for 80 years, no. They moved next door, all of a sudden they did it.
Why?
Because he wanted to. Because he felt doing Birkat Kohanim on Shabbos was the right thing to do, not on Shabbos Chagim. It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But
we
the
do it- we do it
custom
every day.
was not to
Do
do
they
it.
do it every day also? Or?
No.
Why was the custom not to do over there in the old one?
Because there was a whole story with the
Well, who
Vilna
said-
Gaon that he wanted to change the custom and his shul burnt down.
Well, who
so
said that has to
therefore
do
he
with
said not to.
What's that has to do with that? Maybe just it was the creed that I could print down.
It was the custom of the shul not to do it.
So
He
they
said,
went-
we're gonna change the custom because people complain.
So they should win this, exactly what when the Gaon used to do? According to their customs?
They knew customs, a lot of the customs in Israel follow the Vilna Gaon. Many of the shuls follow the Gra. Even in Israel, they use the Sidur HaGra.
But in Israel they do the Kohanim.
Yes, they do.
But the Vilna Gaon.
Because the Vilna Gaon said you should do it.
So why come in Israel it's different here?
Some, because in America, they didn't have those things. They didn't have that kind of, then they changed. Things changed. Okay? I remember by me in Shul, some Kohanim went up on Shabbos, some said, no, our custom is not to. It's been that way for hundreds of years, you can't change it.
Do they have to step out of their room?
They stepped out. And of course, when they were stepped out, they made a lot of noise, and they were very upset and very angry, because we were trying to change the
If
custom.
Kohanim does the Birkat Kohanim, the another Kohen don't do it, should step out?
Right. They don't want to go up because they're protesting,
You have to
they step out.
They cannot stay just, it doesn't
Some
say-
people did stay in and protest, but they shouldn't. All protesters go outside.
What is the just, not protest, just don't want to say, and other people, I mean, other Kohanim say?
Well, if the Kohanim are going up to do Birkat Kohanim and you're a Kohen and you don't go up, it might give the impression that you're not kosher as a Kohen. So it looks bad for you. It's disrespectful. See, the Torah says you have to honor
On Shabbos,
Kohanim.
on the Musaf, he went for the regular.
Right, he
but
went for
Musaf,
Shacharit.
Yeah, but
For Musaf, he was tired.
not tired, but he was like a Shalich Tzibur.
He was a Shaliach Tzibur,
Yeah.
he can't step out, that's okay.
But he just saying, doesn't saying.
No.
Shliach Tzibur could also do that, no?
Well,
I saw
we're
it.
afraid that sometimes,
Because
usually he
a lot
doesn't.
of Kohen at that time, so he's
Right.
I
just
saw
saying,
Shliach Tzibur do
He does it, he's not supposed to,
and
because he loses
he
place.
doesn't read the.
Right, he doesn't do anything.
Doesn't do-
Someone else
just
steps
saying,
in.
yeah, someone else does, and it's
When
okay.
he's doing Shmona Esrei, he's repeating the Shmona Esrei, he says real Shmona Esrei.
Yeah.
So he's not supposed to break concentration. Okay. It says over here that according to some opinions, when they had the Chag of Sukkot, Hashem brought down Sukkot from Shemayim.
Yeah.
So there's a whole debate whether women should eat in the sukkah. So
Yeah.
most of the
It's
time the
man
answer
groma.
is no, because it's mitzvah aseh is man groma. But if you hold that Hashem brought the sukkah down from Shemayim, and the women therefore benefited from those sukkot in Shemayim, then they were part of the miracle. If they were part of the miracle, then they should eat in the sukkah. So he has a whole big discussion here as to which rabbis allowed their wives to eat in the sukkah, which rabbis didn't, back and forth. But then he has a discussion, in the Beit HaMikdash, did they have sukkot? That means they brought korbanot. The Kohanim and their families ate. So he says, in the Beit HaMikdash, you couldn't build anything that wasn't part of the Beit HaMikdash. So they weren't allowed to build sukkot on the Beit HaMikdash. So all the Kohanim who ate korbanot did not sit in the sukkah.
Okay, so when they went 3 times a year for Sukkot, what do they eat? The Beit HaMikdash?
If they ate in the Beit HaMikdash, there was no
Yeah.
sukkahs. But right outside the Beit HaMikdash,
Was.
there was. So if the Kohanim had to eat the food in the Beit HaMikdash, they ate, they didn't have a sukkah. But if they went out because they were shlamim, they could eat it anywhere in the city, then they ate it in the sukkah with their family. But the families did not come into the Beit HaMikdash to eat during Sukkot because they couldn't sit in the sukkah. They couldn't sit in the sukkah because there was no place to build a sukkah. They didn't build anything in the Beit HaMikdash.
Because I didn't call it.
Right. The Rambam writes, Ein boning bo bebeit hamikdash Eitz Bolei Klal. There were no boards. There was
Why not?
nothing. You didn't build. You didn't build huts. You didn't build houses.
Why can't you build a sukkah? It's the rice.
Because in the Beit HaMikdash, you were in a different realm completely. ויש לעין אם הכהנים היו יכולים לבנות לעצמם סוכות בבית המקדש מחוץ לעזור, outside the Azor. And it's a machloket, the Rambam and the Ravid. The Rambam says no, not even outside. The Ravid says yes.
So what
Okay.
actually happened?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I may look like I'm old enough to have been there, but I wasn't there. So I don't know.
There is no remember.
Now, he brings down over here, he brings down proof that women do not eat in the sukkah. What's his proof? Bizarre. He says, according to some opinions, when the angels came to Avraham, it was Sukkot time. We learned that it was Pesach time. Now, what does it say? That they were sitting under the tree. So they say the tree were the branches of the sukkah. And when the angel says, where's your wife? What was the answer?
She's in the tent.
She's in the house.
Why?
Because she doesn't eat in the sukkah.
Wasn't she preparing the food?
So the short answer was she was preparing the food. Maybe she was going to eat in the sukkah with him.
Yeah.
But they use this as proof that women did not eat in the sukkah. Because the Torah says, makes a big thing that Sarah was in the house.
Not important.
So it comes out that they did not eat in the sukkah. Okay, so that's a big machloket. Okay,
No, Rabbi.
what?
The most important person doesn't eat in the sukkah.
There was meaning the
Spoken like a newly married man.
Pesach, not so.
What?
There was
Yes, many people hold that it was Pesach time that they
Yes.
went, but there are some opinions that say it was Sukkot.
because they make
Matzah.
Yeah,
matzah.
it
Matzah.
says the ugot, no?
This is Ugon Matzah.
Sugar, we don't have matzah.
So how can you say it was sukkah? So it was matzah.
It must have been Taki that he served them.
Okay, then it's sukkah.
Then it was Sukkot. That's just creating trouble. Okay. This week we have the Lechem HaPonim. How many loaves were the Lechem HaPonim?
12.
12.
Well,
Why 12?
12 children.
One for each Shabbat. Okay? When did they put out the fresh Lechem HaPonim and take out the old Lechem HaPonim?
Every week.
Once a week.
Every week. What day of the week?
Friday.
Shabbos.
Ah.
Shabbos, not Shabbos. Very interesting.
Daytime.
You would think they would do it on Friday,
It's a prank.
because it's, whatever. But the answer was, if you look at the pasuk, most people don't realize it, it talks about from Shabbos to Shabbos. So Shabbos morning, they put out the new bread, they took out the old bread. The old bread was as warm as they put it on.
But your Shabbos comes in Friday night.
Friday night, but
Could
still,
be
So
done
what do you do
on
Friday night?
what, they did it Shabbos morning. It's
But they
changed it up.
prepare this
They cooked,
Preparation
they
was
baked
Friday.
on Shabbos.
Friday.
No, on Shabbos. In the Beit HaMikdash,
This
they
allow
were allowed to do all these things. Now,
קורבן, ואנשים מקבלים.
because they did a switchover of 12 loaves of bread, there are Hasidic customs that they have 12 loaves of bread on the table.
My brother
Yeah.
used 12.
Your brother used to what?
He used 12.
12 loaves?
Yeah, he used sometimes use matzah and stuff.
So use matzahs and say, put a whole box of matzahs, which for Sfaradim is difficult because you don't make hamotzi on matzahs.
Yeah, but
Whatever.
he was
Now,
asking us that.
you can buy in the stores, in the bakeries, they have a challah, like a round challah, that has 12 little challahs in it.
Yes, small.
And then you just break off little
That's
pieces.
so expensive.
It's a little bit expensive, but that's what's called a yud-based challah. It's a challah with 12 parts. Why? For the lechem hapanim.
Does the Chavetz Chaim say they eat 2 breads every meal?
Yes. The Chavetz Chaim was eating 2 challahs because he says Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbat you don't eat, so you ate 6 challahs. But some people have this 12 loaf bread.
What's the loaf?
Skewed. Round.
A loaf is a,
Lipeshko.
what now we say loaf of bread.
You're not
It's
saying
a
that.
round challah. It's a round challah,
Yeah.
but it's not just round.
Bullet.
It's not like Rosh Hashanah where it's just round.
Bullet.
It's round with 12 sections
It's
to
like
it.
bagels.
Oh,
Well,
so
it's
it's
12
one hallow is a 12
Right.
parts.
12 parts. It's called the Yud Beis Challah, a 12 challah.
Eat base.
Why? to remember the Lechem HaPanim.
You cannot make the 12 separate pieces.
You
like
could, sure.
12 rolls, small rolls.
You could.
Same
You could buy 12 rolls and have under there 12 rolls and everybody gets a roll, sure. Is that what you do?
No,
Is that what you're going to do?
two lipyoshka, like
That's
round
it.
bread.
2 round breads.
Two round breads, they're hard round breads. You don't buy the Ashkenazi challah, do you?
Challah, sometimes challah too.
Sometimes no.
But most of the
Most of the
time,
time it's
Homemade.
round bread.
it's the round bread, and you buy 2 for each meal?
Yeah.
Yes.
And why? Then you don't cut it, you break
Break
it.
it,
Break,
yeah.
yeah.
But you're not buying the big one, you're buying the small one to eat the
The whole meal.
No, I buy the big one.
Only
You don't
three.
like the challah, all the different types of challahs that they have?
No.
No, when my daughter she's baking the house,
Too,
she's
too
eating
big.
the
We like
a lot of
round
leftovers. We don't eat bread.
With the sweet challah, we don't say the
Sweet is mezonot.
mazonot.
No, it's a little, it's a чуть-чуть сладкий, можно его.
We're talking about what Jewish people do. I don't know what you guys do.
We have our own
Does
customs.
that mean? Yes. Yes, you do.
Если
Have your
сок,
own
яблочный сок добавить, джус, тогда это будет мазанот. А чуть сахар, это не мазанот.
Raisin bagels.
Но рaisin уже все.
Okay, let's go on. Next. So now we're going to get into the whole section at the end of the parsha. Here we go. It says, Vayetze ben ish Yisraelit, a person who was born of a Jewish woman. Therefore he was
Jewish.
Jewish. V'hu ben ish Mitzri. His father was Egyptian. He went out amongst the camp of Israel, and he was so angry he cursed Hashem and everybody else, I assume. Okay, so now the question is, what happened here? What was the story? What happened? They've been in the desert for already 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. So where was he this whole time?
Outside came.
No.
No, inside.
Where was he this whole time?
His
Who
mom.
was his father? We know his
Egyptian.
mother was Shlomit Bat Divri.
He died Egyptian.
The Egyptian, his father was the Egyptian who died. Who killed the Egyptian?
Moshe.
Moshe.
She was raped.
That was years ago.
Yeah, she was raped and the father.
No
was
rape. No rape.
Well, we don't know if she was raped
Seduced.
or if she had an affair. We know this much, that of all the Egyptians and Jewish women,
Never mixed.
they never mixed. This was the one person
Yeah, but it was
who
by
crossed the
force. It was
line.
by force.
We don't know.
What do you mean? But it says it was Ben Ishmitzi. That means she was a child from her.
He had a relationship with her.
Yeah.
She became pregnant.
Yeah.
Moshe saw this
Saw this,
Egyptian
cursed.
beating her
Yeah.
husband
Yeah.
because her husband walked in on them,
Yeah.
and Moshe killed the Egyptian.
Exactly, that's what I said. That was actually it was by the force.
It goes,
It was by the force. That's
we
what-
don't know. You're saying it like as if it's a fact. If it was by
So
force,
if you're saying that the Jewish nation, the woman wasn't never doing by themselves, that means it was by force.
no,
Lefka Muslim.
this
She
was
was-
the exception.
Yeah,
And Lefka Muslim.
she was-
They talk
Everybody-
about her Shlomit Bat Divri,
Lefka
that
Muslim
she
Muslim.
crossed the line. Okay? But until now, where was this guy and his mother living? He was living together with his father, not the Egyptian father. Nobody knew that his father was Egyptian.
Only Moshe now.
Only Moshe knew. And Moshe maybe didn't know either,
Yeah, forgot about it.
because nobody knew she was pregnant. That means you have a woman who's pregnant. When you see a woman who's pregnant, who do we assume is the father? Her husband. There's a rove. Rove is the
Yeah,
husband.
But doesn't the child look different? It looks like the father. doesn't it?
Well, if you start looking at facial recognition, maybe. But we don't go by that,
All right.
okay? Because even though Yitzchak looked like Avram, it didn't stop everybody from saying that who was the father of Avimelech. So they didn't follow that, okay? So this woman became pregnant. Nobody knew that the boy's father was this Egyptian guy. Most people didn't even know the story. The one who might have known was Moshe. Maybe. Got it. So, his father was Dasan. What Shevet was Dasan from?
Levi?
Dasan and Aviram. What Shevet were they from?
Levi?
No, they were not Levites. Korach was the Levi.
Oh.
Who was Korach together friendly with? Levi was right next to which Shevet? Reuven. So this guy
Ah, sure, Ruben.
was it Shevet Reuven.
Oh, yeah.
So for the last 2 years, he's been living in Shevet Reuven. That's where his house was, his tent. He was there with his father Dasan. He was there with his mother Shlomit Bat Ivri. Everybody was there in the tent. Where? In Shevet Reuven. What happened? Why did he move from Shevet Reuven?
No, it's not.
Who said he moved?
Well, he's now by Shevet Dan. Why did he move? So the answer is Korach's rebellion. Everybody who was involved in Korach's rebellion, what was the punishment? The earth opened up and swallowed them and their families.
Oh, this kid was around.
So all of a sudden the earth opens up, Aviram is gone, Aviram's wife and children are gone. Korach, wife, children, gone. Dasan, gone. Shlomit Bat Ivri, gone. All the children gone. The earth closes back up, and who's left?
Him.
The kid.
This guy!
Because he's not from the...
So all of a sudden the Shevet Reuven says, we don't know who you are,
Why you alive?
but if you're alive, we know one thing.
You're
Not from them.
You're not from us. You don't belong here. Because Dasan is not your daddy. So now, he says, I don't know who my father is. We know who his father is, the Egyptian. But at least he knows who his mother is. What Shevet was his mother from? Dan,
Oh, that.
right? Shlomit Bat Ivri, the Shevet Dan, it says.
Ah, yes.
Lamata Dan.
From the,
So he took his tent and his little suitcase and everything else and went to Shevet Dan and found a little area and started to pitch his tent. Shevet Dan comes by and says, what are you doing? He says,
My mother.
I'm moving in. My mother was from Shevet Dan. She says, I know. But where you live doesn't go by your mother. It goes by your father. Your father was who? I don't know. I think he was an Egyptian. Well, then go back to Egypt.
Poor guy.
You know, that's right. Poor guy. So he says, I'm going to take you to court. What does every Jew do? You go to court. Who was the Bet Din? Moshe. Moshe's the court. Moshe knows the facts. Moshe knows the case. Moshe's true. Moshe killed his father, the Egyptian who crossed the line. So Moshe says to this poor guy, you know what, I really feel bad for you, but you're in a difficult situation. You don't belong here. You don't belong here. I don't know where you belong here. We have to figure that out. But you just can't move in. He got so angry because he just lost his mother. He just lost his father. He just woke up to realize that he's not even from what, he doesn't know what Shevet he's from. This was a lot for him to absorb.
Why
So he says, what do I need this religion for?
Why he wasn't sure that he's Datan's son? He's himself, I mean.
Why? Because Dasan raised him. Dasan was there.
Yeah, why he didn't tell us I'm his son?
So whoever you was raised by, that's your
Why
son.
didn't he say he was Dasan's son?
Он умер.
He would have been swallowed up by Korach.
В землю провалился бы тоже.
The fact that he didn't die is proof he's not the
Yeah, but
father.
doesn't it say if you raise somebody's two children, it's like you...
It's like him, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't
So why
blood.
did God punish him
Чужого
then?
поколения,
If he was-
кто есть.
Why did Hashem punish him?
He didn't punish him, he just didn't kill him.
Oh, so what
It's not
happened?
the part of the family.
So what happened to who?
Didn't, since
He got
cursed
killed
Hashem- yeah.
because he cursed, not because of what happened to Dasan.
But why was he blamed for cursing?
Because you know,
Because
he
you
was in that
have to be
situation.
responsible. When you get angry and you get into a fight, whose fault is it?
Yeah, but that situation wasn't his fault.
He was a victim, but he's still responsible. You get angry and you push someone
What's
in
your
a fight,
language, in
the
other
guy
words?
falls back and hits his head and he dies, what's going to happen to you?
You're in jail.
Yeah, but here's different.
Not much.
No, you have to
It is,
control
because
yourself.
nobody wanted him.
No, you got
Any
I
normal person
understand.
will do that.
to control.
Don't say any normal person would do that.
Yeah.
He had a problem. There was no easy solution. We deal with this in court all the time.
Like this case?
Cases like this where people have, they claim they have a claim on an estate and they found out that they don't have it. Happens all the time. So you don't go and curse the judge. Because if you curse
Why
the
is he
judge,
killing
you
somebody?
know what's gonna happen to you?
Jail.
Get more.
Got it?
Yeah.
Good.
You got it? They can control themselves.
Okay, so he cursed.
Talking about him, right?
Now, there's a problem here, very interesting problem. In the Jewish camp, as they were traveling, if you got separated from your
Shave it.
Shevet, or if you weren't sure what Shevet you belonged to, what was the Shevet who took all the stragglers in? No,
Levi?
Shevet Dan. They were the Ma'asaf, the Kol HaMachanot. They gathered all. So if you didn't know who your father was, and you didn't know which Shevet you belonged to, guess where you settled? Dan.
Why do they
Done
tell
also-
Said
why
Dan
don't
says
they-
no, they said no to him.
So why did they say no to him?
Yeah,
Dan says yes to everybody. This guy, he said no.
But him.
That means they knew?
No. The answer is a fascinating answer. The Sifri brings an answer. He says a guy is lost, comes to Shevet Dan and says, you know what, I don't know where I belong. I don't know which Shevet. I don't remember who my father was. I'm lost. Shevet Dan says, nobody's lost. Come, we'll take you. This guy walked in. He didn't say, I'm lost. What did he say?
I'm belong here.
I belong here. Really? You're entitled? When you say, Magi Ali, it's mine. You know what Shevet Dan says to you? Take a hike.
Yeah, but his
It's
mother
a
was
fascinating Sifri. The
Not
Sifri
funny.
says, everybody who came to Shevet Dan and says, help me,
Ask
I'm
nicely.
lost,
Ask nicely.
They were taking it.
Disrespectfully, that's why they did it.
this guy didn't ask.
Like a tough.
He moved in and started putting up, what are you doing?
It's order.
I said, what do you mean what I'm
He
doing?
was raised like that.
Oh, he was raised like that.
Now you're talking-
Now you change your.
You and I have to have a conversation, I think.
Was raised like that.
He was raised like that.
So who is
Yeah.
responsible?
His parents.
But you said it's not the proof.
Yeah,
It's
child is from
exactly
his parents.
Egypt.
It's not proof of anything, but the Sifri says that had he come to Shevet Dan and said, listen, I've always thought I was from Shevet Ruvain, now I don't know what I am, I don't know where I am, I don't know where to go, can you help me? They would have said, no problem, come on in, here's a section, set yourself up, welcome, join Shevet Dan. But he didn't do that. He moved in, has put up his tent, and when they said to him, what are you doing? He says, I belong here. This is my spot. No?
This mistake was
You think? Someone comes into your house and says, listen, I don't have a place to stay. Can I stay by you? Fine. Someone knocks at your door, you open the door.